We're here to explore diverse career paths through personal experiences and real-life examples.
And also to offer profound insights to inspire your professional journey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Work Without Borders. I'm Flora.
Hi, everyone. This is Calvin.
Welcome to our episode today. We're going to talk to Dr. Jordan Galpin, who obtained his Doctor of Medicine in Dentistry from the University of British Columbia. And then we're honored to have him over to talk about doing business as a dentist. And then Jordan is my personal dentist. So I'm very curious about not only his technology and his service, but also running a business as a dentist. Hi, Jordan.
Hi, Flora. Thanks for having me on.
Hi, Jordan. Welcome.
Thank you for coming. Welcome, welcome. So, why don't you give us a short self introduction? I guess your occupation is very straightforward, but
Yeah,
yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
sure. I'm born and bred in Vancouver. I got my undergraduate degree in biochemistry in Ontario. And then I did my dental degree at UBC, which is the main university here in British Columbia in Vancouver. And I've been working as a dentist in the city of Vancouver for 5 years,
Wow.
something like that.
Yeah, so I think one thing I want to bring up right here is a lot of dentistry students. They just graduated and then left the medical school and then they join a clinic. But as far
Mm-hmm.
as I know, since I started to come to see you, you already got your own business and then you're running your own
Mm-hmm.
business. What made you to take the leap to start your own business right after your dentistry school?
My wife. um, when I graduated, you're right. Maybe 20 years ago, it was not uncommon for new dentists to open a practice right away.
Mm,
But the cost to open a practice has gotten increasingly more expensive. Dental school has gotten a lot more expensive. So, new dentists, they tend to have quite
Mm,
a bit of debt. And they just, I guess, want to spend a few years hammering out the wrinkles and making sure they're ready before purchasing a practice. And a lot of dentists now they never plan on buying a practice because it carries a lot more responsibility. You're a business owner, you have to deal with staffing. It's basically a second job. So a lot of people like the freedom of just being an associate, working for another dentist or another office.
mm.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to dial back a little bit. So, Jordan, like you mentioned, going to the medical school. So, is it pretty much the same process as a doctor? I mean, like the general practice, like what's the cost,
Hmm.
like roughly alike? And then how many years of study do you have to be at the school to finish this degree?
Yeah, that's a really good question. High level, you could say that it's very similar for doctors, lawyers, and dentists.
Mm,
So in
mm,
Canada and the US, there's always exceptions, but generally speaking, to apply for a professional program, you have to have an undergraduate degree prior. So at
mm,
least 3 or 4 year degree prior. And then each of those professional schools have an entrance exam. So if it's medicine, we write the MCAT. If it's dentistry, we write the DAT, and then lawyers would write the
mm,
LSAT. And so you write that examination in combination with your GPA and volunteer hours and all that stuff. You apply for the schools and you get in, hopefully. And then it's 4 years of schooling if it's dentistry. And you have an optional GPR. So GPR is a general practice
mm,
residency, which is essentially where
mm,
you work at a hospital or
mm, mm, mm.
um, generally in hospitals for 1 or 2 years before you start working as a dentist. That's, again, optional for dentists. Maybe 10 or 15% of dental students, at least in my year, they did that.
Ah.
Whereas, for example, doctors, they have to do the residency before they get certified. So they do their 4 years of schooling and then anywhere from 2 to 6 years, sometimes more, of residency where they're working in hospitals before they can work as
right.
a doctor. So that's a big difference. Even though our time in school is the same,
Mm-hmm.
a dentist can start working quite a bit earlier than a doctor can.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And then cost-wise, what's the
Yeah.
cost for dentistry?
That varies quite a bit as well,
How so?
mostly by province. So
Oh,
UBC, the school I went to, is well known. I would say infamous for being the most expensive program in Canada, not just for dentistry, but in general. So UBC's program is $60,000, give or take,
Mm,
per year, whereas the medical school program is around $15,000 to $20,000 per
mm,
year. And again, you have to go for 4 years. And that could, for dental school, that can vary quite a bit. If you go to McGill, last I checked, which
mm.
was a while ago, but it was like
Hmm.
Wow.
less than 10 grand per year. So that's you
Wow.
could do 4 years of dental school, finish your degree, and have spent less going to
I
McGill
see.
than 1 year at UBC. So it varies quite a bit. Um, it's hard
Yeah.
to give a specific detail, but if you're a Canadian citizen and you get in, or a PR, and you get
Yeah,
into a
right.
Canadian dental school,
Mm,
you do get a lot of support. The banks will give you a big line of credit to pay.
that's right.
Ah,
You qualify for student loans and stuff, so it's never
Yeah.
really a big problem. And most of the schools are only open to permanent residents or Canadian citizens. So if you don't
right.
have that residency and you're applying from China, for example, you can't apply for those programs, which is, an interesting point that I didn't realize before I started the applications.
Wow.
They're very restrictive in that way.
Wow. So I guess as like a
Right.
fresh dentist, you would come out of school, average carrying out a debt of close to 50,000 to 100,000.
300,
Well,
350K,
350K.
Yeah.
like 350K. Yeah, if it's
Uh,
UBC, and especially you got to think you're paying for
Wow. Oh,
accommodation and
right.
all that as
true.
well,
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
equipment,
Wow.
things like this. Yeah,
But
yeah, about 50,
Wow.
60 grand a year.
That's
that's
Yeah,
a lot of money.
it is a lot of money. I agree.
That's very stressful. But does that give you any advantage per se to go to UBC? Does that give you any advantage comparing to those who go to McGill?
UT or McGill.
Yeah,
Um,
not really.
it's hard to say because I only
Mhm.
went to UBC. I didn't go
mm,
to
True.
every single dental school, so I can only give you my
Mm.
admittedly biased perspective.
Hmm.
I I got into a couple of different schools, some that were
Mm.
much cheaper in Canada, and I chose
Mm.
UBC because I wanted to work in Vancouver,
True.
and I thought those connections with the professors, instructors, specialists that I would build would be valuable. Um, and it has been valuable. I don't know if it's necessary. I think all the
Fair
dental
enough.
schools have to be accredited. They're all
mm.
equally good, I think. Um,
Fair enough.
it depends on those other circumstances and what's important to you.
Right.
Yeah, they're all good
Right,
schools.
right. I know the Canadian bank are actually very supportive of all those professionals, like
Yeah,
dentists and
Lawyers.
doctors and
Yeah.
lawyers
Oh,
out there because
yeah,
they
they give
love
like
them.
special,
yeah,
yeah, like the special
yeah.
loans. So because they know that your prospective income in the
Yes, it's quite
future will
high.
be
Yeah,
high, so that's why they will want to lend
yeah,
you money,
Mm.
right? So I guess that's the bright side is that there's supports
there is.
out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
So I want to go back to the comment you just made that you opened the clinic because of your wife. How why? Like,
How did that work?
yeah.
Yeah. So, um, I live in the city of Vancouver, as you both know, and the city of Vancouver is a very saturated market for dentists. So in Canada, foreign trained dentists can write a international dental exam, and they can get certified and then work in the country, which is good.
Oh.
But a lot of those new dentists, they choose to work in the bigger cities, and so those bigger cities can get quite saturated, which means that the amount of work in those cities per dentist is less than what we would expect. Um, Dentists, the income they make is quite a bit less in the bigger cities. So most new grads, they opt to leave the lower mainland or to leave those big cities and go
Hmm.
out into very rural areas because they can do a lot more dentistry in general because there's no specialists there, so they're doing a lot of the work, and they can be very busy and be very productive and make a lot more money. So it's rare for new grads to stay.
Hmm.
I stay, and I was thinking of doing that exact thing because that's very common. I stayed because my wife, who worked at the bank and had a lot of people that she knew and a lot of friends, was confident that if I was able to either find a space to open or rent a chair, which is what we
Mm.
ended up doing. We rented some space that we could bring in enough people to be busy. And to her credit, that was true. She got me very busy very quickly. So I thank my wife, and I definitely credit the success to my wife. You
Yeah,
got to
she's
have a
very
good
good at
family support.
BD. She
Yeah,
moved me into your
Teamwork.
practice.
that's right.
Teamwork, teamwork,
So
teamwork.
Yeah,
so now
that's
I'm
it.
getting more curious because Calvin, I don't know if you have noticed recently, but we see a lot of new dental clinic opening
Hmm.
all the time. But
True.
Hmm.
Jordan, you just mentioned this is a very saturated market. So I don't understand because
Yeah,
like what I saw it's like oh new dental clinic here, new dental clinic
yeah,
there. But like how come it's saturated and people
Yeah.
are still keep opening it? Because it's making money
yeah.
or
Very
like
good question. Yeah, I guess, I mean, I'll preface this by saying opinions are my own. I can only tell you as much based off the evidence we have.
oh sure.
Um, but part of it is that when the banks look at a dentist or a doctor and providing funding, they're looking at the whole country, right? RBC and BMO, all the big banks, they look at the whole country. And they know that generally speaking, whether if you're a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer, you're a pretty safe bet. So most of the banks will give you 100% funding to start a new practice. You can, if you choose a spot and you want to open a practice there, they'll fund the whole thing. Not many business owners get that kind of luxury, and you get it at a very reasonable rate. They give you a rate that nobody else really can get, and so there's a lot of incentive that if
Oh.
and dentists, they want, by and large, they might want to live in the city of Vancouver or in the city of Toronto. So even knowing that it might be a saturated market, they might be willing to take the gamble so that they can stay in the city. And because they have the funding, they can open up the practice. And
Yes.
again, on a federal level, on a national level, most dental practices, it's a very safe bet for the bank. Most of them will be successful. But the research that's come out from our dental association has showed that in the city of Vancouver, that's not the case. A lot of new practices don't do very well and either lose money or go under in a short period of time. So you might see a lot of practices opening up, but I'd be curious to see how many of them are still there or still in the same hands after 5 years.
Mm,
Yeah,
wow.
it's a
Oh.
tough
So
market.
as a business owner now yourself, do you call yourself more of a dentist or business owner? And which one do you like more so far?
100% dentist. Yeah. And I think, I mean, Flora can maybe attest to that without getting into details. If you come
Hmm.
to my clinic and there's let's say we take some x-rays and there's some areas with maybe a little bit of decay, but it's not very deep. Um, because again, Vancouver can be that really saturated, cutthroat market. You might have certain clinicians who will look at that, and it's not wrong to treat it, but they might look at something that could be watched and say treat it.
Mm,
And I'm my philosophy is fillings don't last forever. If the decay is shallow and might not progress, I like to
Hmm.
watch it. If my focus was solely on making money, I'd be telling those patients to do the treatment, and I never do that. So always for me, the priority is to be a good dentist, and whether we make a lot of money or whether we just make ends meet, I think that should be secondary. And I think patients aren't stupid. Patients pick up on if you're authentic and
mm,
genuine about that stuff. So for sure, dentist
Yeah,
first.
absolutely. Yeah, I really like going to Jordan, and also my partner is going to Jordan as well. We think that Jordan is very attentive and thorough, and then he's very considerate in terms of all aspects, your condition, the treatment and
mm.
necessary, or even like the insurance part. So we do have a very good experience with Jordan. Yeah, but running business is
Thanks, Flora.
You're welcome. No, 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 it's from my heart. Yeah, but running business is almost like a different set of skills.
Yeah, it
What
is.
do you
Yeah,
say? Like how did you obtain your business acumen per se, or how would you develop yourself into this business mindset
yeah.
or like skill set?
I guess trial by fire, right? I jumped in, and then if you make a mistake or you learn from the experiences, and you're able to fine tune through those mistakes. That's really the way that I tried to do it. Um, they don't really teach how to be a business owner in dental school. But I felt like it was something where you have to just kind of dive in and navigate the problems as they arise. And again, very lucky. I have a lot of support. So I have
Hmm.
a lot of people that I can turn to, and I'm like, oh, this is maybe difficult, or I'm not sure how to navigate it. And it could be other dentists, because I know a lot of senior dentists who have been owners for a long time. my wife, who's a financial advisor, can always
Mm.
chime in. And I just have a good network, accountants, and everyone that I might need, I have the support. So that's really helped.
Yeah, that's great. It's kind of like everything falling to places so that you can run the
Hmm.
business smoothly as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hmm.
definitely a teamwork, right? But then, like at this moment, Jordan, which one
Hmm.
to you is harder? Do you think is the dental work itself, or is it actually like running the business?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I would still say I'd say the dentistry is harder.
Mm,
Yeah, because
Um,
dentistry is a very large scope. As a general dentist, it's very dissimilar from a lot of other medical specialties where you pick your specialty and you're in that niche and that's all you deal with.
mm,
Um,
oh,
General dentistry, you're only dealing with the oral cavity, but there's a lot that you can do within that oral cavity. So you could do root canals, but that could also be falling under the purview of a specialist. An endodontist would be a
right.
root canal specialist. You could deal with really complex gum disease, or you could have a specialist do that, what we would call a
Mm,
periodontist. You could do braces or orthodontics, right?
yeah.
All of that a general dentist can do. It just depends on their training and their experience.
Mm.
And so the more, if you're very keen, you can bring a lot of these additional skill sets into a practice, but it takes time and it takes a lot of focus and effort to learn those skills and be able to adequately provide them to
mm,
patients. So there's a lot that a dentist can offer. So I would say that that is definitely still the bigger challenge because I'm always trying to add new and more complex procedures that I
Mm.
can offer to
wow,
patients.
wow.
Yeah.
So
It's a never end
yeah,
game.
exactly.
Yeah.
So like I guess my next question is like how do you stay current, right? Like especially with all these great
Hmm.
AI technologies that's coming to our lives right now. Like
Hmm.
do you see that heavily impact your dental industry and how do you stay current?
I think AI and I think technology in particular has had a big impact. Younger dentists tend to be, not always, but they tend to be a lot more keen to on the uptake for that new technology.
Mm-mm.
Um, and I think with healthcare, you need to find the right path. You can't be too keen because sometimes the technology hasn't quite made it there, and you don't want to be using that on your patients
Oh,
if it's not fully
mature.
vetted.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's hard to find the line between being the most up to date um, and not I don't want to say put your patients at risk, but ensuring patients are getting a high quality of care. So for example, um, I took up a digital AI program that will diagnose X-rays for you, and so that's become very popular. And more dentists are picking it up. And one of the big features was you could have the AI assess the x-ray, show the patient where the decay is, and then you're not the bad guy for saying that there's decay. The algorithm has done it for you. Um, and so I picked that up, and the system would automatically assess them. But I found more often than not, it was over diagnosing in my with my X-ray system and with what I saw. I felt like it was way over diagnosing, and so
Oh.
I stopped showing it to patients. I would look at it for my own, I guess, edification, just to see what the system thinks, and it might flag something that was small and maybe not visible, but the AI was like, hey, that there might be something at the corner there. So it had value, but I felt like if I was just following that AI system
Mm,
and treating, I'd be way over treating. So that's kind of where those risks are, and you still need a bit of attention from the clinician. Um, yeah, that's one example. Doctors, dentists, we all have requirements for continuing education. So
Ah.
even a much older dentist, they are still going to study clubs or they're going to seminars and they're learning the newest tips and tricks to meet those requirements. Um, I like to say the requirements are the floor; it shouldn't be the ceiling. So there's a
Yeah,
set
I
number
like
of
that.
credits. I think 90
Mm.
credits every 3 years.
Hmm.
That shouldn't
mm,
be the goal, is just to get the 90 credits. You should be trying to learn as much as you can. Um, but it's a good incentive to make sure all dentists are at
wow.
least trying to keep up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Jordan is very driven. So, I was curious when you were mentioning the AI diagnose. So it sounds very contradictory. People somewhat trust AI more than just
Mm-hmm.
you as a dentist who's professionally trained, and then
Mm-hmm.
like you've had your own experience, but they were like, oh, AI said this is my problem, and then I believe
Mm-hmm.
in AI. However, AI can be over treating, which actually needs a human being, an expert to
Yeah.
actually tell. So
Yeah.
can you unpack a little bit more on what other technology you adopted in your practice, or like you see might be interesting or useful in the future?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to talk your ears off because there's lots of cool tech that's come out. Digital sensors, they've been out for a while, and that's essentially what we use in a growing number of practices. They use that when they take an X-ray, and not only does it provide a much more high resolution image, so you can see a lot more as the dentist. You get
Mm,
a much larger image, so you can show it and talk about it with patients. Like that's all great.
mm,
But another big benefit for patients is it's a lot less radiation. So even with
right.
the old films, the radiation is still low. It's nothing to be worried about. But the new digital sensors, like the digital sensors we adopted, were a fourth or a fifth of the amount of
Mm,
radiation was needed to take the image compared to the old film sensors. Like that's a lot of, and for patients that might be worried about getting radiation, it's a big benefit. So digital sensors, I think, has been a big game changer for a lot of practices. Digital scanning, I don't know if I've ever done that with you, Flora, but
Mhm.
um, you can scan the mouth and you can show the patients what's going on inside the mouth.
I
They
think
can
so.
see what I
Yeah.
can see.
Yeah.
It's great if patients are thinking about orthodontics because you can actually
Yes.
click
Yes.
the AI and the
oh
AI
wow.
will make a plan to show you what your teeth would look like afterwards. And now,
Yes.
yeah, now with
Hmm.
the newest iterations that Invisalign has come out with, you can take a photo of the patient before anything has started. You do that digital scan, and it will show them when they're
Mm,
smiling. It will show how the teeth have changed from before and after. So you can even do a video, have them talk on the video, and it will
wow,
show
that's
what the
pretty cool.
new smile will look like with them talking in the video.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Yeah. So AI is doing a lot. I think way down the road, AI might even take over when it comes to hand skills. Like, right now, if you need a filling, I'm in there with a drill, and I
Yes.
I am trying to get the right angle, to get the right taper. I'm trying to make
Mm,
sure everything is straight. I'm trying not to nick the adjacent teeth. Like there's a lot there that the human eye can only see and do so much in that funky angle with the saliva and the water and all everything that's going on. So I think there's a push for AI where the doctor is still there and keeping an eye on what's going on, but the AI is just going in and just doing a cut and just cutting the tooth right where it should be at the perfect angle, and at the perfect size. So that's a long ways out, but I think it's probably on the trajectory
wow, yeah, yeah.
and pretty
Wow.
cool.
I heard that the similar thing happened in the surgeon, the operation room, right, where they just use
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
robotic arms to do a lot of things. So I guess what you just described, Jordan, like I can foresee that coming into the dental industry. Maybe,
Hmm.
you can just be there to ensure that everything is good, but all those
Yeah,
precise procedure can be done with the AI or robot, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Amazing.
So, Jordan, I want to ask you, what suggestions do you have for younger people who want to get into this career path? What suggestion would you give
Hmm.
them?
It depends on circumstances. I guess I'll preface with that. Um, I would say, especially in Canada, the undergraduate programs, by and large, are very competitive. So a lot of people choose science at UT or UBC with the goal of becoming a doctor or a dentist.
Right.
And you're put together with thousands and thousands of other students who have the exact same goal. And the university, they have a mandate or an expectation that averages be kept at a certain level. So even if you're very bright and talented and hardworking, that can kind of work against you. And it can be very stressful to do well. Um, and so a lot of students, they really agonize for those 4 years to get the GPA or get what they need. So one thing, if it were my son, for example, and he wanted to become a dentist, I might say strongly consider the Australian schools because the
Mm,
Australian schools, we have a
Ah,
reciprocity agreement with Canada. So if you graduate from an Australian school, you just write you don't write
Interesting.
the international board, you write the domestic board, which is known to be a lot easier, almost like a rubber stamp. So you write our Canadian boards, which are much simpler, and then you can just come back to work here. And importantly, you can apply to those schools right out of high school. So instead of doing a 4 year undergrad, you just right from high school, jump right into dental school. It'll be 5 years instead of four, but you're going to finish a lot earlier. And then you can either work in Australia or you can work in Canada. Um,
Wow.
the yeah, that's to me, if my son was like, I really want to be a dentist, I know that's what I want to be, and they're sure of that in high school, I'd say strongly consider the Australian schools because you're going to save yourself a lot of headache, save yourself a ton of stress of trying to do
Mm,
well in undergrad, and you're going to be done a lot faster. The big
wow.
downside is you don't get any federal support and it's more expensive because you're an international student. So mom and dad will have to help the kid out, but
That's
it's a good,
you.
yes, I know, but it's a good path. It's a good path if they know what they want to do.
Wow.
And conversely, if you wanted to stay in Canada or that was really the only option for you, I'd say consider going to. You don't have to go to UBC because the universities, the dental schools don't. They're not going to knock points off if you went to um, a smaller university.
Right.
So you could maybe go to a smaller university, and if you're really driven, do very well at that university, and then maybe have an easier run at getting into the schools. So I'd say don't get fixated on going to a top tier university
Mm.
because you might find that competition is going to make your life a little bit harder to get to that final goal. You're almost
Mm.
shooting yourself in the foot.
Those are
That's very
great tips.
heartfelt suggestions. I guess
Yeah.
how much stress you went through, Jordan.
Yeah, learn from
Yeah.
my mistakes.
Speaking of stress, like how would you rate your stress level right now on a day-to-day work, from 1 to 10?
um, Again, dentists are well known for having good work-life balance in general. So most of my
Ah.
colleagues who work, they work 4 days a week. They work 9, 10 hours a day, and they have a really nice work-life balance. A lot of my friends who went through medical school will envy that benefit that dentists have. You
Mm.
can have a good
Oh.
work-life balance. So that's, I would say, is more the rule. Um, than the exception. I think I work a lot. We work 6 or 7 days a week, and I
Yeah.
work 14 hours a day most days. Um, and part of that is just because we're in Vancouver. And so being open later and being open on weekends is a service that patients appreciate. And so we want to
Absolutely.
offer that. Um, but it creates a lot of stress. I've got a little kid, but I don't see him that much because I'm always at the office. Yeah, always
Mm.
Yeah.
working.
I was
Yeah.
very impressed by how much Jordan works. That's
Yeah,
a
14
lot.
hours a day. That sounds a
7 days a
lot.
Yeah.
That
week.
sounds a lot. 7 days a week, yeah.
Yeah. It
So
Yeah.
I
does
guess
add up.
like
Yeah.
if you would have rented a chair somewhere, you would have worked less, right?
Well, no, not necessarily.
No?
You rent a chair. I had a really favorable experience and a favorable terms. I rented a chair from my family dentist who I knew. And so they gave
Oh.
me a really good rate. They just basically said, I'll take a percentage of whatever you earn of your production. And
Mm.
so there was no stress on me to be busy right away because as I earned more, they would make more. But in the beginning, if I was making less, they were taking less. So
Mm.
it was a very kind arrangement. But I still tried to work as much as possible and to offer weekends because it was something patients liked. But for a lot of new dentists, renting a chair is not cheap. It can be $20,000, $30,000 a month to rent a single chair. So
Wow.
there's incentive to work as much as they can to pay the
Wow.
rent. Yeah.
I mean,
That's
that
a
sounds a
big
lot of
fixed
stress to
cost.
me.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like
Yeah.
you open your eyes every morning, you're in debt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, like Jordan was just like, oh, dentists normally, have a really good work-life balance. So that
I
just set the
know.
tone of like, oh, sounds like an easy life. But then you're like, oh, never mind. You're waking up, you're in debt of $20,000. I'm like, not
Yeah.
so much.
It really varies. If you want to open a practice out in the interior or in the suburbs, you can work lower hours and or like shorter days and shorter hours, and you'll be
Yeah.
fine because there's so
Yeah.
much demand. the city of Vancouver and the city of Toronto and other, you know, metropolises. There's a lot more there are a lot more dentists, so uh, the competition is a little bit more fierce. So it does end up being more stressful in these specific scenarios.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jordan, I want to go back to the trajectory of your career path because Calvin and I, since we started to run this podcast, we actually talked to a lot of people and then we
Hmm.
introduced a lot of like career transitions. So, my question here is first, how were you so sure that you want to be a dentist when you were so young? And my
Hmm.
next question would be, what if you really want to do something else one day? What's going to happen?
Yeah. Is it
Yeah.
easy way out or yeah?
No.
No,
No. I mean,
you're you
not unless you want
you
$300,000
you're
in debt that you
tied.
can't pay back. Yeah. I had a couple of classmates that were second guessing their decision to be a dentist because it can be very stressful for sure. Um, and expectations have only risen with dentistry, you know, like it has to be very aesthetic. Patients need to have a very positive, calm experience. And, um, you know, you're working on the human body. There's a lot of variables that we can't predict. So it does, for a lot of people, create a lot of stress. And I had classmates who were second guessing, but they all graduated and they're all working as dentists because they had a $350,000 debt they had to pay. So yeah, I mean, once you make the choice, you're pretty much you're going to go down that path.
Oh wow.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, unless mom and dad are going to come help you out, right? But generally,
Wow. But like what
yeah,
traits would you say it's good to have to be a dentist?
that's a good question. I think a desire to teach is really valuable. I worked as a
Huh.
teacher in China for about a year, and I am teaching patients all the time. So if I see decay or if they need a root canal, a lot of patients don't understand like what is a root canal, like what am I seeing on the x-ray, what is the risks, what are the benefits of treatment.
Right.
Being able to like sit down and explain in simple layman's terms, this
Hmm.
is what we see, this is how this disease might progress, these are our options, these are the costs, because in dentistry it's not covered, right? So the patient needs to know that too.
Right.
And that's very important. So being able to teach is really important. And then um, attention to detail. Like I don't want to say OCD, but I'm very, very picky. And in
You
dentistry,
probably are.
you've got to be very picky because,
Mm.
you know, a slight open gap or a slight discrepancy,
Yes.
even if you don't see that with the human eye for bacteria, that could be like an open door and,
Wow.
the treatment will fail. So you have to be, yeah, you got to be a hard, you got to be, you know, really
Perfectionist.
demanding. Yeah,
Yeah,
demanding
perfection
about
is
what
the
you're
good.
doing.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Mm.
definitely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess another secret sauce of Jordan's practice is that he is actually bilingual. He can do his practice in both English and Chinese.
Yeah.
Mandarin.
Wow. You
Yeah.
know what,
Yeah.
Jordan?
That.
My dentist just sold his practice. And then the reason why
Calvin's
I was
moving
with
to.
the reason why
You're
I
welcome.
was with him for the last 4 or 5 years was that he's also a really good friend. Is that I just trust his words, right? Like whatever he
Yeah.
says, I trust him because I know that if he says, Calvin, this needs work, I know he's not trying to like screw
That's
me
it.
over. I know that my
Yeah.
teeth needs work, so I just trust him so
Exactly.
much. But now he sold his business and he's just
Yeah.
working as a part time because he wants to retire. He said
Mm,
Yeah.
he has it enough, right? Like that's his word.
Yeah.
He had
mm,
enough.
mm.
Now he's just want to work like 2 days a week, and so now it's even harder to get his time because his
Yeah.
practice is all the way out in Surrey. So maybe
Yeah.
Oh, you consider Jordan. Consider Jordan.
Welcome.
Highly
You're
recommend.
welcome to come, Calvin. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It's tough, and then like that sale can be a very difficult transition. Not speaking to your dentist office,
Mm,
but you imagine if a corporate office takes over, for example.
Mm.
Among dentists, corporate offices are known for being, you know, they are there to make money. And so often they'll tell the dentist working there, we expect that you will make a certain amount of money per hour. And so the pressure
Wow.
is on the dentist and the staff to find work and to be busy and to be productive because the corporation expects to make a profit. And so um, that can be a problem, and that's growing. That's an ever growing problem in the country because we have a lot of corporate offices, And corporate offices can get good deals on materials. They can get a lot of benefits that help them grow fast.
And bring down the
Um,
cost.
Mm.
yeah, bring down the costs.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so, again, I know a lot of corporate owners who, so they own the practice maybe 50%, and the corporation owns the other 50%. And those practices, if the owner is really ethical and really good, the practice is good. So I don't want to be disparaging to all corporate offices, but that
Mm.
sentiment and that feeling exists for a reason, and that's become a big concern. And transitions can often be very difficult, even if it's to a private individual. So if an older dentist is selling, and then a new dentist comes in, um, if let's say there's
Mm.
enough patients to keep one dentist busy, but now you have two dentists. So all of a sudden, it's like, well, who's going to be doing all the work? What's going to be happening?
Right.
So transitions can be a very tricky part of becoming an owner,
Mm.
and it can be hard to navigate for sure. I
Mm.
think I was very lucky that so I rented a chair, and then I got very busy much quicker than I expected I would. So then we ended up buying a older practice,
Yeah.
and because I had my own patients that I moved into that practice,
Yes.
the previous owner was able to just continue
Mm.
doing what
Oh.
she was doing. So there was very little actual change other than the fact that I was there seeing my own patients, and then gradually we all work as a team. So I've seen all of the old stock patients there, and the new patients have met the other dentists there, and it's been really great. But that's definitely not,
Wow.
I would say, not the norm. A lot of dentists, they struggle with the transition. It's hard to do. Yeah, it's hard to do the handoff.
So, Jordan, I actually didn't know this type of arrangement called corporate dentist, because they
Takeover.
just own, yeah,
Yeah.
takeover. So they just own a bunch of clinics, but they basically hired the dentists. And then,
Yeah.
but yeah, I always feel like everyone is like private owned.
Hmm. Yeah. And so part of that is when a corporation creates a new clinic or takes over an older clinic, they have stipulations in the agreement that the previous owner will stay for a certain number of years, so that
Sure.
transition isn't that obvious, and they keep the old name if possible.
Yeah.
Mm.
So they won't put the corporation title on there.
So I guess, well, I mean, it's good to know that Jordan speaks, both Chinese and English. So if any of our audience needs a dentist, right? So
Yeah,
now they
feel free to
know where to
come.
find Jordan.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I guess my last question would be, coming back to you, Jordan, is that what is your plan? Like, do you see yourself retire at the age of 45? You're like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm gonna go enjoy my life, or you plan to work hard until I don't know, you're like 60.
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, I mean, I really enjoy dentistry. I would like to, over the next few years, hopefully cut back a bit. I don't want to be working every single day,
Mm,
but I could see myself working for a long time. I enjoy seeing patients. I enjoy being in the office. I enjoy being able to provide a treatment that really makes a patient like happy. Like you do Invisalign, where maybe even just a small thing, like a couple teeth are crowded, but it's bothered the patient their entire life, and then in like a very short period of time you're able to fix that, and for them they feel like it's life changing. Like that's great.
Yeah.
um, so I enjoy it, and I find that if I do have free time, all I'm doing is thinking about my patients or the practice, and so I don't
wow.
know, I'm invested. I don't expect I'm going to retire, um, and I like where I work. Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
my follow-up question on that is, Jordan, I know you just have a newborn baby, and then you really didn't stop working at all for past, I don't know, 4 years. Like you didn't
Hmm.
even have a vacation. I mean,
Yeah.
like what do you see yourself change a little bit to adapt your new lifestyle with a new baby in the horizon?
Yeah. That's a tough question.
Wow.
Everybody thought
You
that
just
when
want
the
to
baby
work.
was born, I would work less to spend time with the baby, and I really want to spend more time with the baby for sure, because those years, especially the beginning, it passes
Goes
so quickly.
fast.
It's
Goes from
precious.
like, yeah, just they can't move, then all of a sudden they can crawl, then all of a sudden they can stand and then talk, and it's like every day I come home, I think, oh, he's doing something new.
Mm,
Um, but even like through those, I've still been at the office all the time. Again, I've got a really good support network. My mother-in-law is always here to help. My wife is really on the ball about that stuff. Um, I have tried to take a couple of short vacations so that I can take advantage of that period with my son. Um, I don't know. It's a very hard line
Mm-hmm.
to. It's a
Sure.
hard, yeah. It's a hard
Mm-hmm.
balance to make.
Wow.
Right.
I just think that if a dentist out there is willing to put the patient
First.
ahead of their family or their own son, I mean, it is a great dentist from
I
a
don't know if
patient
that's a.
perspective,
It's not a
right?
good thing to
So
say. Yeah.
from
See,
I
I
mean,
don't
from a
feel. I
patient's
don't feel good
perspective,
saying that. Yeah.
I mean, you don't
Mm,
have to, Jordan. I'm
I
just,
know, but
speaking from the
yeah.
patient's perspective, right?
Yeah,
Like,
everybody makes sacrifices. I remember going through school, and a lot of my friends who immigrated from China, the dad was still back overseas working, and they had that, like, there's a term for that, right? Where
mm,
they had to do that in order to make ends meet and to be able to support the family. And it's
satellite family, I think
satellite
it's called.
family. That's it.
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously you don't want to be in that situation, but you make you have to make the compromise when it's necessary. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a newer practice, at least in my hands. It's growing quite a bit. Patients again are used to longer me being there in the evening or being there on weekends, so um, compromise. Yeah, hopefully
Yeah.
I can adjust a little bit. Maybe bring someone to assist me in the future, but for now it seems to be working.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, hopefully you get to spend more time with your son and
Yeah.
your wife as well.
Yeah.
Well, my
And
wife often assists me, so I tell her
yeah,
office time is
his
family
wife is
time.
working at the clinic as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, okay,
They actually
yeah,
perfect.
spend time together.
yeah. And as
That's
soon as my
wonderful.
son can speak, I'll have him at the
Mhm.
reception. We'll all just be there together.
Okay, I'm looking forward to speak to him.
Yeah. Honestly, I have to say, since I knew Jordan, I feel like a significant part of his mindset is very connected to our Chinese culture. I think he's
Mm,
Mm,
very hardworking and devoted. It really sounds like the type of mindset we're very familiar with, a lot of Chinese
mm.
people who are working really hard.
mm.
I always had that feeling.
Yeah,
Maybe,
thanks,
maybe,
Laura.
maybe you get that when you were learning Chinese.
Yeah, and I grew up in, like, near the Chinatown area, and so I grew up
Hmm.
with a lot of Hong Kong immigrants and a lot of mainland Chinese immigrants. So I always admired that very devoted
Yeah,
work ethic. So yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
I think I definitely some of that has rubbed off growing up with friends
yeah,
from that background.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
And that's assuring
Yeah,
to know, right? Your dentist is very devoted.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. We get a call
100%.
on, like, a Sunday night and the patient's in pain. We'll go right into the office, no question. Patient calls like, oh, like, my tooth broke. I'm like, we'll see you in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
All
it's
right.
important.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess, yeah. I guess we're just here to wish Jordan's clinic is,
I
doing
know.
better and,
Better.
have a
Mm.
prosperous year ahead.
Thanks.
And
Yep.
thank you so much for
Absolutely.
being here with
Yes.
us and
Yeah,
sharing
Thank
well,
you
your
thanks
so
for
great
much,
inviting me
Jordan,
on.
stories.
for
Yeah, it
sharing.
was a lot
Thank
of
you.
fun.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you both.
All right.
Okay.
That's it for today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
And yeah, and then for all the audience, you can keep finding us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And then we will see you again next Wednesday.
See you next Wednesday. Bye bye.